Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're continuing from yesterday evening with text 23, 10, 14, 23, and a little summary of what this is doing, this verse. In this section, the understanding of Jiva Tattva in relationship with Vishnu Tattva, the differences between the two, their two tattvas, is being explained. What we heard Sanatana Goswami say, or write yesterday, was in the previous section of verses or prayers, Brahma was establishing that Krishna is real, because some people say something else. So on the strength of scriptural references and his realization and so forth, he who's the manifester of the Vedas and knows the Vedas is establishing Krishna is real. And as that reality, Satyam, he's the absolute reality, absolute truth. Param Satyam Dhimahi. Param Satyam Dhimahi is a phrase from the very first verse of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is a Dhimahi, it's a meditation. It's an exposition of Gayatri Mantra, Dhimahi, on Param Satyam, the absolute truth. So the absolute truth is a person, without covering all the things the previous verses had to say. He is simultaneously of medium size or of a human form. Martyalingam is the phrase in Sanskrit. And he's all pervasive. He's Vishnu, he's all pervasive, he's everywhere. Simultaneously, which is a contradiction, of course. And that's all, so he has inconceivable potencies. So the forms of the Lord as Purusha avatars, Guna avatars, Leela avatars, and all the other avatars, they're within him. They're his expansions. The relationship, Sambandha, the relationship between Krishna and his potencies, material, spiritual. Now his relationship with the jivas. That's the topic. And to make it the method that is being used by Brahma in this prayer is he's describing not only that Krishna is real, but here are his characteristics in the language of the Sri Vaishnava group, his Vishishtas, his qualities or characteristics, and they are different than the characteristics of the jiva. He's real, and he has transcendental. His qualities are also real, and those same qualities are not qualities of the soul. So here's the verse, translation, text 23. You are the one, Supreme Soul, the primeval Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth, self-manifested, endless and beginningless. You are eternal and infallible, perfect and complete, without any rival and free from all material designations, upadhis, material designations. Your happiness can never be obstructed, nor have you any connection with material contamination. Indeed, you are the indestructible nectar of immortality. Nice. So here's Jiva Goswami's commentary, which is a little arduous. I saved it for last because those who have been following along will already have an idea of where this verse is taking us. What Jiva Goswami does is largely take each of the terms, endless, beginningless, eternal, infallible, perfect, complete, without rival, etc. He takes the Sanskrit term and supports Brahma's conclusion based upon primarily the Upanishads. The Upanishads say the same thing. So what Brahma is saying is not just like his fanciful or imaginary or something. He got carried away. It's supported and grounded, and so that's what Jiva Goswami is doing largely. His commentary begins. Brahma summarizes an intermediate topic. So there was a bunch of other topics, and he's calling it an intermediate topic because he's going to go on to other things. Since you are the cause of Narayana, you are the cause of Narayana. That was established text 14. We're at 23. And are one alone, text 18. Standing with yogurt rice in your hand, you are the basis of all material and spiritual manifestations. Eka tvam atma. That's from this verse. Eka tvam atma. Then he refers to the Upanishads from Gopal Tapani. Tam ekam govindam such chidananda vigraham. The form of Govinda is eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Concerning the word Atma, Gopal Tapani says, Sakshat Prakriti Paro Yo Yam Atma Gopala Katam Tu Atirno Bhumyamha Vai. Meaning, how has the supreme form of Govinda, who is beyond Prakriti, appeared on earth? So Atma, he's beyond Prakriti. Then, quoting the same chapter, later verse, text 55 of this chapter 14, he's going to quote two of them. Krishnam enam avehi tvam atmanam atmanam. You should know Krishna to be the original soul of all living entities. So he's illuminating what does this word Atma mean and how is it spoken of in other places that are similar. Text 50 of this chapter. Sarvesham api bhutanam dripa svatmaiva valabha. Ittare patya vitadyas tad valabhata yaiva he. O King Parikshit, for every created being, the dearest thing is certainly his own self. The dearness of everything else, children, wealth, and so on, is due only to the dearness of the self. So this is expanding on the word Atma. Concerning the word Purusha, Gopal Tapani says, so Purusha, Atmatvam eva sadhyati Purushaha, or Govinda is known as the Purusha. Similarly, Purusho Yosav Uttama Purusha Gopala. The ultimate Purusha is Gopal. Same. So those are two terms. He's going to go through the whole list. Same method. Atma, Purusha. Next is Purana. Purana is from chapter 44, the 10th canto. Concerning the word Purana, it is said, Godha Purana Purusho Vana Chitra Malyaha. The ancient Purusha wanders about decorated with flower garlands. Concerning the word Satyaha, here's a prayer from Canto 10, Chapter 2. The demigods pray. It's a very celebrated verse. Satyam Vratam Satyam Param Tri Satyam Satyasya Yonim Nihitam Cha Satye. You know the verse? Satyasya Satyam Rita Satya Netram Satyatmakam Tvam Shadanam Prapanaha. Lots of satyas in that verse. O Lord, you are true to your promise, truth incarnate, pervading all aspects of time and time with truth, before the creation, during its existence, and after its destruction. You are the reveal of the sweet words of truth. We surrender to you the embodiment of truth. Whichever demigod said that one, that was pretty good. He gets a special award. From Gopal Tapani Upanishad, concerning the word Swayam Jyoti. We heard this yesterday. Swayam Jyoti, he's self-effulgent or self-manifesting. People desiring liberation surrender to Krishna, who bestows his mantra to the learned and protects them, who is the Supreme Lord revealing himself through his intelligence. Now, presumably his intelligence means that liberated soul. So same method. The word anantaha is illustrated as follows. This is the Damodar Leela chapter. Nice verse. Nice verse. Na chantire, na bahir. He's not within and not without. Na yasya na purvam na picha param. Purva param bahis chantire. Jagato yo jagatchaya. Tam matva majam avyaktam. Marchalingam, there's the phrase. Human form, Marchalingam, or sometimes translated as medium form, meaning not the all-pervasive Vishnu, but he's Vishnu with a Marchalingam. Adhoksajam, Gopi Kolukala, there's the ulukala, the grinding mortar. Gopi Kolukala Damna Babandha Prakritam Yata. So this is the Damodar Leela translation. Thinking of the invisible Lord who has no inside or outside, who has nothing previous or after him, who existed in the past and will exist in the future, inside and outside of the universe, who is the universe. Thinking of the invisible Lord as her son, appearing with a human form, though he was beyond material senses, she tied him up to the mortar like a normal child with a rope. And then this is chapter next is similar idea, chapter 3 of Canto 10. This is prayers of Vasudeva and Devaki. O inaugurator of the material energy, time, which starts with second and ends with years, which rotates to make the lifetime of Brahma, and by which the universe moves, it is said to be your movement. I surrender to the Supreme Lord, the abode of fearlessness and happiness. It seems like he's just having fun, referring to the terms and some of his inspired favorite verses that amplify this quality. So, adyaha. What does adyaha mean? Original, right? Original? Adyaha. Concerning adyaha, it is said, here we go. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. There's the Anadir or Adir. Krishna is the supreme controller. He is the enjoyer of innumerable consorts and the possessor of an eternal form of knowledge and bliss. Though he is without origin, he is the source of all other forms of God and is the cause of all causes. He is Govinda, the boy who cares for the cows. And now we're back to the prison house of Kamsa, and prayers of Vasudeva says, Viditosi bhavan sakshat purusha prakrite para. Kevalano bhavananda. We're going to hear this verse again. Swarupa sarva buddhi drik. Vasudeva says, I know you directly as the Supreme Person beyond material existence, as the impersonal Brahman, as Paramatma and Bhagavan. Okay, moving on to we're going to keep going like this. Each of these qualities of Krishna are being, Brahma's speaking his realization, and there's scriptures to support his realization, but kind of embellishing what that quality means as well. And that the end is going to be, and the living entity doesn't have those qualities. The living entity has the opposite. Their bodies are not nityaha. Hey, look at this. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. That's from Gopal Tapani Upanishad, and the other half of it we don't hear so much. Tam pitagam yenu ya janti vipras te sham siddhi shashvati netare sham. He is the chief eternal and the chief consciousness who, though one, fulfills the desires of all beings. Those Brahmanas who worship him, situated in Braja, that he is situated in Braja, attain perfection and not others. And then another from Gopal Tapani starts, it's a long one, but it starts, Etad Vishnu Param Padam, etc. Krishna reveals his abode to those who constantly meditate upon that abode and do not worship material objects. Same method concerning akshara. We touched on this yesterday, but here we go again. Ksharam, the living entity is ksharam. Yasmat, this is Bhagavad Gita 15:18. Yasmat ksharam atitoham aksharad. So there's kshara and akshara. Aksharad api chotamaha. Atosmi loke vede cha pratita purushottamaha. Jiva's rendering. Because I am superior to the jivas, to the Brahman, and to the Purusha known as Paramatma, even to the other forms of Bhagavan, I am celebrated in the Vedas and the Smritis as a supreme person. Isn't that an interesting translation? Not what we find in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. Akshara. Kshara and Akshara. Concerning Ajasra Sukha, there was a question yesterday evening about that term. Does anybody remember what we heard last night? Ajasra Sukha. Do you remember what we heard yesterday evening? Jasra and Ajasra. What's the meaning? Sukha we know, happiness. It's like infallible or without limit. So, concerning Ajasra Sukha, it is said, Gopal Tapani again, Krishnatmako Nityanandaika Rupaha. Krishna is a form of eternity and bliss. Vasudev. We're back in the prison house of Kamsa again. 10.3.13. I know you directly. Oh, this is that same verse. Viditosi bhavan sakshat purusha prakrite para kevalanau bhavananda. Bhavananda. The ananda of bhava. I know you directly as a supreme person beyond material existence, as the impersonal Brahman, as Paramatma and Bhagavan, form of bliss. Concerning purity or niranjana, Narada says, Canto 10, Chapter 37, let us approach you, the Supreme Lord, for shelter. You are full of perfectly pure spiritual awareness and are always situated in your original identity. This is when Narada visits Krishna after making a short visit to Kamsa, saying, go get Krishna because he's the 8th child of Devaki. He goes to Krishna and says, I'm waiting for you to kill Kamsa. So, concerning Purnaha, we discussed this yesterday. Purna means complete. Complete? Concerning Purna, in Shruti it is said, from Gopal Tapani, please explain to us the worship of Govinda, the support of all things. Brahma says, 2 verses ago in this chapter, who knows where, how many, and when your pastimes will take place in the universe. Purnaha. Concerning Advaya, the Shruti says, Gopal Tapani again, I offer respects repeatedly to Krishna, the greatest without compare. Advaya, non-dual, or there's no equal to him. Concerning Muktaha, the Shruti says, Sakshad Prakriti Para. He is beyond Prakriti, free from all coverings. Just a little reminder, where this train is going is to say the jivas and the Lord are different. It's a in Madhva's philosophy, Madhvacharya, in his philosophy, it's Dvaitavad. And one of the principal challenges to Shankara's teachings is it's not one, it's two. And Hari and Jiva are different. Now there's other things that are different, Panchabheda, but that's, the fundamental. The living entity is the source and he's real, and the living entity is from the source and is real. There is a connection, but the living entity is real. Concerning Amrita, deathless, right? The Shruti says, quote, death is afraid of Govinda. Or, we're back in the prison house of Kamsa, where the prayer says, no one in this material world fearful of the snake of time has become free from fear even by fleeing to various planets, but now that you have appeared, death is fleeing in fear of you. And the living entities, having obtained shelter at your lotus feet by your mercy, are fearless and tranquil. Another on Amritaha, Gopal Tapani again. Concerning his difference from birth and death, that says Amrita, Shruti says, he is steady, he is indivisible, he is brave, he lives among the cows, and he protects the cow herds and lives among them. In his commentary, Sridhar Swami indicates that the word Swayam Jyoti Niranjana Mukta excludes 4 types of results of action. And that's it for text 23. So that, what that was about is the 4 types of action: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, 4 types of action. And the results of the 4 types of actions are not part of Krishna's life. He doesn't involve himself in those things. Living entities do, commonly. Now, liberated living entities, because of their connection with Krishna, the source of everything, they also don't pursue those things. They pursue one thing, that is their connection with Krishna. I saved that one for last because it's a little arduous and because you're all very patient, so I thought it would test your patience a little bit. But going back to the message, in order to reach the stage of prema, there has to be proper understanding of sambandha. Sambandha abhideya prayojana. Say it negatively. If one doesn't have a proper understanding of sambandha, any idea they may have of love of God is likely to be strange or mistaken or not hitting the target. There's no, if we look at the intention of somebody that wants to know God, that's nice, that's to be encouraged. And to guide that intention to know God, Brahma Jigyasa, wanting to know the absolute truth, one can miss the target altogether. One can even become offensive, as impersonal teaching is offensive to the person, the personality of Godhead, and thus to the devotee. So we encourage the inquisitiveness to the absolute truth, but we also encourage proper guidance. You were taking the questions online yesterday, yes? You were taking the you were reading out the questions from online. So yesterday, I was thinking further. Could you reply a little more pleasingly to the person who asked the questions about Shankara and the questions about Arjuna?
Yes, Hari Prabhu asked the question.
Okay, so could you communicate with him the following? It's best, stated positively, then stated negatively. It's best to hear from one source, for those who are followers of ISKCON and Prabhupada, is to read Prabhupada's books. and become well grounded in Prabhupada's books before starting to read other books. Because if you start reading other books and then go back to Prabhupada's books, you'll get confused. It says that there and it says this here, so what's going on? Kind of thing. So, Hari, please make your effort to carefully read Prabhupada's books. And if you're very well read in Prabhupada's books, then you can consider, because that's the gold standard, it's just like holding an object up to light. Is it transparent? Does it conform with the Siddhanta of Lord Brahma? Like this, so that's what we're doing. It's a little arduous, but read Prabhupada's books very carefully before you go wandering here and there to read other things. And when it comes to the stage where you're well versed in Prabhupada's books, ideally you have somebody to guide you that understands, the big picture of what Prabhupada is saying, because sometimes it requires some guidance to understand how does this fit together with that over there and things like that. Then under the guidance of such person, you can consider reading the very same literatures that Prabhupada drew his conclusions from, like Chaitanya Charitamrita or the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami or something. So my response was not very pleasing. I just said, be more careful with the books that you're reading. So stay with fidelity, under guidance, ideally, to understand Prabhupada's writings. And then the questions that you asked will be very clearly addressed. And negatively, avoid going here and there reading different books. It's specifically cautioned by Rupa Goswami to avoid that. Because why does one go here and there? It's either I want to show off that I know so many things, I know something from here and there and the other place, or to try to understand the absolute truth by Gyan instead of by Bhakti. And, both are advised against. So stay with the Bhakti line, and you'll become more clear and you'll reach the goal. You go all these other places, you won't get very far, you'll become very confused. You'll be stuck. Another birth. No, that's not a good plan. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. It's 8 minutes after 8.
I will pass to him this video reference from the time we spoke.
You did what?
Whatever you gave the answer, it is recorded. As soon as I have the text, I'll communicate with him.
Thank you. That's what I would like you to do.
Manish, I see 1 to 1.5 minutes delay in the streaming, so I want you to wait for a couple of minutes for the question.
Thank you. Anybody in the room have some comments? We have a microphone. It's protocol.
Guru Maharaj, the verse talks about the qualities of the difference in the qualities of living entity and the Supreme Lord.
Can we make the volume a little bit more? Thank you. Go ahead. Keep going.
My question is, there are certain qualities that seems like common between us and Krishna. Looks like Purana, means we are also the oldest and Krishna is also the oldest. Adya is no beginning and we also don't have. Not as a conditioned soul, but as a as an Atma. So how to differentiate in those qualities, how Krishna is different?
Based upon the qualities that are different, we can differentiate. That is to say, while living entities are eternal and thus Purana, they're emanations from the Parabrahman. So the living entities are not the source of living entities. So there may be some overlap. A Venn diagram. There's some overlap. Qualitatively similar. Okay?
One more question.
Okay.
You mentioned that sambandha, a strong sambandha understanding is required to reach the stage of prema. So the way I see all these qualities when our acharyas explain is more than understanding, it gives me a lot of pleasure in those explanations, like how they are explaining and how they have gone deeper into each of those qualities. So that is how I hear and I see, but it may not be like complete understanding, but it is just happiness in hearing. Is that enough?
Yeah. There's, in spiritual circles, there's relish in hearing, chanting, and remembering the qualities and pastimes and activities and form, etc. So it's rasika in addition to confirmation. It's not just tattva, it's also rasa. Anything else? And besides the online, anyone else in the room? Yes?
Thank you, Maharaj. I was just thinking about the third canto description of there is like when there's a description of Mahatattva and the difference between Mahatattva and Jiva also there.
The difference between Mahatattva and
Jiva.
And Jiva.
Yeah, it's just similar to like what we were
Okay.
discussing today about like Vishnu Tattva and Jiva as well. But I just feel that this description is more relishable, and in the 10th canto in general is more relishable than third canto is more like technical, like the different elements and like how it's also describing that it's eternal versus, the jiva being like, both are eternal, but there are certain differences that are described on a material, like matter based and so on. So my question is like both are like part of Bhagavatam, and
Yes,
one
they
is
have their place.
more relishable. So, and devotees naturally tend to spend more time in, and more there's more attraction to the 10th canto versus the third canto. So is that because both are parts of Bhagavatam? So
when you're building a house, one of the things that's really important is that you have good materials. Some of the modern houses, the doors are like, cardboard. And then there's somewhere in between, then there's hardwood. So that if you want a long-standing house, you want to make sure you have good cement, good materials. So in establishing a relationship with Krishna, a clear, fundamental understanding of what constitutes our relationship with this world, what constitutes our relationship with Him, what constitutes His relationship with the ingredients of creation. Before you just let's go to the 10th canto. So then, after the house is built, then you may want to get into details of. I know somebody that does it. There are people that build the houses and the people that do the details. What fixtures, what light switch, this is and that. And it can be more elegant, it can be more simple, it can be the taste is in, but you want to have a strong house, whatever the elements within the house are going to look like. You follow? So before you go to the which fixtures, let's make a really strong house. And then there's all kinds of appreciation or taste in those variegated details. Finish work, they call it. Okay? And to get it right, when you go to the 10th canto, it's good to have a good picture from the 3rd canto. Okay? Yeah. Let's do the protocol. Thank you. You got to hit the button, right? Is it on? Okay, it's on.
We were reading 5th canto.
First canto.
Fifth
canto.
And in that we were going through teachings of Rishabdev.
Okay.
So in that it says that Jainism was formed on the basis of teachings of Rishabdev, and Rishabdev is incarnation of Krishna only. And then somewhere it says that the teachings of Jainism were not in line with Vedas. They were different than that. So
yes.
Can you say a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. It's a little technical, but a big part of Jainism is detachment, the austerity that he advocated, and that's where the root of it is. But Jainism has a whole other idea that's not part of Rishabh's teachings. No deity worship and all kinds of things like that. The root is there, but it's distorted in some very important ways. The connection is there in some important ways, and the distortion is there in some important ways. Does that help? Okay. You're very enthusiastic to read out the online questions. Go right ahead. And they're probably enthusiastic to have you here, to hear you read their questions.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. We have 2 online questions. One is from Sneha Mataji. Our Sampradaya is called Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya.
Yes.
I also hear that Mahaprabhu took initiation in Shankara Sampradaya with the names Puri and Bharati. Madhavacharya gave commentary to dismiss Shankaracharya's philosophy. How are these 2 sampradayas are connected?
They're not. First of all, the pronunciation is not Madhava, but it's Madhva. They mean different things. It's Madhva. Second is, Madhva also received sannyas initiation as Ananda Tirtha from a Mayavad line. So the sannyas mantra is one thing, and the doctrine or the vada or the teaching is another thing. And Madhva's teachings are in direct contrast to Shankara, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings are in direct contrast to Shankara, but they both accepted sannyas from the Adi Shankara line. Now Lord Chaitanya, it is said, accepted, so because it would then be accepted in the world. At the time, the world at the time has strong influence of Shankara faith. So he took sannyas in that line, Bharati and Tirtha. and Puri. Okay? Next.
This is from Prasad Prabhu. When I read about universal form and Vedic cosmology, I feel enlightened and enlivened. Whereas when I read even a simple basic pastimes, I don't feel such happiness.
Look at that.